All right, I'm here with Austin Mao. He is the co-founder of a legal nonprofit psychedelic spiritual center known as Ceremonia, and he's a keynote speaker. Austin, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks, Joel. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, pumped, man. Psychedelics, has been on my radar for a long time. I've been working with a coach myself, and I see a lot of value in it, especially having been a first responder for 15 years. I know there's a lot of organizations out there that are looking to disrupt this paradigm of what we consider, trauma, PTSD. This is what you just have to live with. But we're seeing a lot of beautiful things happening from the psychedelic medicine space, psilocybin, ayahuasca, things like that. So I'm excited to jump into it because that's what you're doing on a full-time basis. Talk to me, Austin, though, for people that don't know not only what ceremony is, how did you get started in this? Was there a pain to purpose story? What was your journey into plant medicine that made it such a mission for you that I got to do this all the time on a full-time basis? People need to know about this.
Yeah, thank you for that. So first, I just want to say thank you for having me on the show, Joel, and thank you for your service as a first responder. I just imagine all the lives that you touched and saved. So I really appreciate that history in you.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
For me, when I started this path of plant medicine, it was by random chance. I I was an entrepreneur. A lot of people don't know this, but I used to have the largest Airbnb operation in Las Vegas, hosting 2,000 guests a month, right? And a friend of mine, Keith Ferrazzi, who wrote a really well-known book called Never Eat Alone, he says, come to this ayahuasca retreat for founders. You'd be great at it. And so I signed up not having any idea what this was about, what ayahuasca was. Also, I've never been to a retreat before. I heard that word and I thought, okay, we're going to wave a white flag and surrender, right? So this was in Mexico, and I went in thinking this was a networking opportunity. And I remember I was sitting in a cafe having a taco before going into the retreat center, and I finally pull out the preparation documents, and it says, take this really seriously. This can be a life-changing experience. Eat really healthy. Don't drink alcohol. And I was like, that's stupid. And I closed the laptop and I took a sip of my margarita,
Too late.
So
Yeah, too late. Whoops.
dude, I totally didn't have the intentionality that I really recognize is important in this experience now. So going into this retreat, I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder. I had done psychedelics about 100 different times in many years of Burning Man festivals, nature with friends, etc. So I thought to myself, what could this possibly show me that I had not already seen? Yeah. In the first experience, I'll never forget that first night. I drank this cup of sacrament, which is like a dark brew tea. And as I went into the psychedelic experience, into my own self, the first thing that I had was I got to experience, like, relive a memory of being held by my mother. And what I felt was I was this child and being engulfed in what felt like warmth and safety and love. And I felt a degree of being home that I didn't remember ever having, right? And that's really significant for me because I moved around so much as a kid, 4 times before the age of 10. And then I saw a vision of my father who had passed 4 years prior. And I got to introduce to him my wife, who he had never had an opportunity to meet. And I didn't even know I was missing that. I thought I had, quote unquote, properly grieved him before, but I didn't know that I was missing all the opportunities in my life that I would never get to share with him again. After that night, I woke out of that and I said, hallelujah, I am healed. I get it now. I am ready to go home, right? And yet we had 2 more ceremonies left. The second night, I drank the ayahuasca again. It was my birthday. And I went in with the intention of exploring memory. So we have a podcast called Modern Enlightenment. And I had a guest on here who is an expert studying memory and psychedelics for the University of Texas, right? A professor doing that. And we got into this conversation because I had very little recollection of my memory. For example, trying to recollect a memory of my childhood, it was a complete fog. There were bits and pieces. And even a few months back was relatively hazy, right? But that was my normal. That's what I lived with my whole life. I didn't really think anything of it. Yeah. As I started going into my memory back and back and back in time, I started reliving it in just extraordinarily vivid detail. Um, like, have you ever had a dream where you didn't know you were in a dream, right? It just felt like you were living that experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say most dreams are like that. It was like that experience. So I was revisiting a memory of traveling to Italy with my mother. The next one was turning my locker combination in high school, right? Um, Reading passages in a book, and I was going back in time until I was a child under sheets. And then for a moment, it was completely dark, and I felt horny. And I popped out of that experience, like, on a yoga mat in the middle of a jungle with, 50 other founders that are in their own experience. And I was like, what could that possibly be? And when I went back in, I realized I was sexually touched at 4 years old by a man in a way that no boy should ever be touched.
Mm.
And it clicked for me. I was like, oh my God, I understand now what happened. I studied psychology in university, and I realized that I was a textbook example of repressing memory. I never even knew that was down there. And I started going forward in time with the realization, the epiphany that not only did I have that confusion, that guilt, that sense of pleasure that was really a little boy could not know how to process, but also the repression of my memory. I was a bully as a kid. I had sexual confusion as a teenager. I couldn't keep relationships well because I would simply forget the incredible memories that I created.
Mm.
All the way to the present moment where I was lying on a yoga mat in the jungle, and I came out with tears in my eyes, and I said to I told the shaman what happened. She said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And I said, no, 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 you don't understand. I feel like I was cured of Alzheimer's. I am so incredibly grateful. That moment heralded the renaissance of my life. And I started writing again. I repaired my relationships with my ex-girlfriends. I healed my relationship with my mom. Um, I devoted myself more and more to spirituality. I went in agnostic bordering atheist. I came out with a felt sense, a certainty of what divinity feels like.
Mm.
And that was a few years ago. And as I've been learning more and more about this path of plant medicine and integrating, modern psychotherapy with ancient Eastern wisdom of mindfulness, it's been unfolding into ever deeper like paths of beingness for me.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. And that was just in the first two. And then you had a third session as well, right? Was there any
Yeah.
big ahas that the third one, was that another layer that you also unraveled after the third one?
The third ceremony was almost a synthesis of everything I had experienced up until that point. And I wrote a poem that I've performed on stage in front of hundreds of people called Thank You. And it begins with this line: thank you for the connection between things, the energy that draws us together, the binding of the trees to each other, the roots of this earth and the water underneath us, the soil that feeds us, the love from Maya to us all. And I go onwards with this poem with so much gratitude in my heart. I was in that moment experiencing what God feels like, a deep, convening harmony with nature, and reliving the experience of holding my father's hand as I said, I love you, as he passed. And just reliving all these experiences, both what I had previously felt were adverse, were negative, were challenging, and recognizing that every time I stumbled in life and got myself back up, every time I turned left when I could have gone right, led me to that present moment where I was experiencing myself in a way that I had never known possible.
Mm.
And I felt grateful, extraordinarily grateful.
Yeah. Wow. What do you think was the big difference, Austin, when you said it yourself, man? I've done over 100 something journeys myself. and it sounds like they were macro doses or micro, like you did multiple. And it sounds like in those times you did it, there was really no intention going in. But even going into this 3 day experience, at least day one, there was no intention either, it seems like, from you. What do you think was the big difference that shaped this experience different than others? Was it the strains? Was it the intention? Was it the environment? I don't know.
So, you know, I've now since worked with about 500 different individuals, 200 through Ceremonia, right? And I like to share that the gap between normal waking consciousness and a psychedelic experience is already considered ineffable. Something like 12% of America takes psychedelics every year. A lot of people don't realize just how prevalent it is, right? And for those 12%, it's literally unexplainable to their friends what that experience is like. The closest proxy could be breath work if people have tried it, or deep states of meditation, right? I I believe that that gap is just as wide between recreational psychedelic use and therapeutic or ceremonial psychedelic use. And there's an even greater gap between what I believe, you know, ceremonial use is and what we do in Ceremonia. So how I explain that gap of experience is going inwards versus going outwards, right? Attention is power. When you if I'm on a stage and I'm holding the attention of 1,000 people in the room, there's a certain amount of power that I hold. There's a certain amount of respect that people, theoretically have for me in that moment, right? When we bring our attention inwards to the most tender parts of ourselves, to the parts that have been wounded, get triggered, that get angry, that seek to avoid, and we pour loving kindness into those parts with the support of something like plant medicine, then we're able to meet ourselves in a way that we never have the opportunity to in waking consciousness or even in recreational psychedelic use. So when I was running around festivals or camping with friends or doing wherever, right, my attention was always outwards. I was
Mm.
enjoying a movie. I was enjoying a concert. I was enjoying taking a hike with friends, right? But in a ceremonial capacity or a therapeutic capacity, we are often putting a blindfold on, lying down on a mat, breathing, and going deeply inwards in a meditative experience. And that's all the
Wow.
difference in the world.
I'm listening to you talk, and now I'm almost at the point where there's almost no point to. I mean, listen, you can do it at home and bring that same intention and attention and create that attunement. But I really think from listening to you, if you're going to do a plant ceremony instead of microdosing here and there every day, I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm just saying that, man, if you just shotgunned and did a 3 day intentional, because I know for me, I got to hire coaches like yourself. I've got to be around these kind of people that are saying, Joel, you're going to do it. I'm going to put this cell phone down, because if I'm at home and I'm having some microdosing, oh, something's going to pop up. Oh, I have to take that. But if you're in the jungle in the Amazon for 3 days, that's all you're doing. And you're just super present and you got nowhere else to go but in. I love that. I think that's a great, that makes so much sense. And I can see why Ceremonia works when maybe just the regular, your micro dosing gets shipped to you and you pop a couple pills throughout the week. Man, what a difference. I can see. Wow.
Yeah, this is what can be and in our case promises to be a transformative experience. Now, the scientific definition of a transformation is equivalent to the death of a parent or the birth of a first child, right? I mean, that is a life-changing experience for most people, right? And I ask people, if you're going into life-changing surgery, or if you're about to be with your parent as they pass, or be with your first child, are you checking your phone, right? Are you scrolling through Instagram? Hopefully not. Maybe some people might, but hopefully not, right? And
Austin, they're doing this. They're like, let me document this. This is good for
yeah,
my followers. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But if you're going through life-changing surgery, for example, what are you going to do? You're going to go seek out the very best support. You're not going to ask your friend to do it for you. You're probably not going to do it yourself, right? You're going to go to experts um, who can earn your trust through their experience and through your intuitive sense of what their being is like. Do they vibe with your values and what your intentions are? And so I would urge anybody seeking to explore a macro dose of a plant medicine experience, or to have a transformative experience, even independent plant medicine, like really do your homework and really treat this with the care that is deserving of a life-changing, experience that will impact your relationships, your business, your spirituality for your entire life.
Yeah. Yeah. Really cool, man. I was just thinking too, you were, it sounds like you were, I know Keith Ferrazzi, I'm not friends with him, but I know who he is, read his book. The guy's a big time networker, a very successful guy. You're over there in Las Vegas running an Airbnb, very successful. You're already very successful. Okay. Now, a lot of people, when they go and do these transformational experiences, a lot of times they feel like they're missing something or they want to see something. And at the point in your life, you're doing very well. I'm curious, since doing these experiences and especially your first one, how has that changed you personally and maybe how you view success or how you pivoted yourself? Because someone looking on the outside will go, well, Austin was already doing really well, like big deal, and now he did this experience and you're telling me, man, I had all these downloads and I was able to wash these memories away and actually really go through the grieving process. But what does that look like now on the other side? How has it transformed your business, your life, your relationships moving forward? I'm curious.
This reminds me of a friend of mine, Jeff, who every time I would post on Facebook or on Instagram, I used to have, you may have heard of this, the 4-hour work week. So I would work 4 hours a week from anywhere in the world, and I was making a high 6-figure income, right? And what I would do is I would post on Instagram this great beach that I'm at, or this mountain that I just climbed, and my friend Jeff would always comment, "Look at Austin humble bragging again," you know, and I would laugh about it. But what I was doing is I was living this Instagram life, but on the inside, I felt meaningless,
Mm,
purposeless, directionless, right? And I was constantly chasing. I was doing my fair share of partying and my fair share of substances too, especially when I was in Vegas, right? And I didn't realize that what I was missing. There's this great book called The Second Mountain by David Brooks, who was a New York Times columnist. And he shares that in life, you climb a first mountain, which is external success, accolades, career, work, etc. Um, and then occasionally you meet somebody who has a level of embodiment that you're like, there's something about you that I really like, and I can't necessarily put my finger on it. For me, it was a scuba diving instructor in Koh Tao, Thailand. Right, this guy, he probably didn't take a shower for a few days, right? And he's about to bring us underwater. He's living hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck, but he has the biggest smile on his face every single day, right? And I could tell just from being next to him that he was living a life full of extraordinary joy and love for what he was doing. And meanwhile, here I am paying for his service, right? Living in nice hotels, and I was envying this man. Yeah. That's when I glimpsed the second mountain, what is possible, right? And so um, I've I've guided Silicon Valley unicorn founders, billionaires. I remember there's a friend who's a billionaire um, that shared with me the story of how he had a heart attack in his office at the age of 52. I mean, if that's not a call to an awakening, what is? For me, I didn't have something so grievous, but what I can say is that as I started to climb the second mountain, realizing what's actually valuable in life, holding my father's hand as he passed and recognizing that I was supporting my father to pass with peace because he started to recognize the value of love and family instead of chasing after money, right? That is what I discovered through the support of plant medicine.
that is so cool. I wanted to ask you because this is a telling point for me too. I've been really I don't want to say talking about, but really thinking about the idea of death and working backwards and thinking, like you said, if you're on your death, you know, I think there's a Cornell study that says 76% of people, they die with the regret of like, I wish I had had more experiences. I wish I had done more. I wish I had connected with more people. And yet we all know this deep down that when we die, no one's going to say like, oh man, Joel, I'm so going to miss all the Ferraris that I own. Like that's not going to happen. We're always going to say, I wish I had connected more with my kids, my wife, the people I love, had more experiences. We know that, but yet we still get caught up in that rigmarole. And I'm wondering for you, has the experiences and maybe even with the founders that you've worked with, has that become more in the forefront of like really being in the present moment right now and here, knowing that death is coming, like they say, memento mori, and that to die with no regrets? Has that changed for you the way you look at life, or even, like I said, some of the founders and the people that you work with?
100%. One of the questions that we ask our participants in preparation is, how do you want to feel the moment before you pass? Who do you want in the room with you, right? And most times the answer is love,
Mm,
peace, joyfulness, gratitude, right? Whether you're a billionaire or you're a starving artist, you're going to pass. I'm going to pass. We're all going to meet that inevitable end, whether it's on a golden throne or on the side of the road, right? So, how do you want to feel when you pass? That feeling is the feeling that we are chasing after. And what happens is in life, we go through this conscious process of have, do, be, do, have, right? And we start to define ourselves by the things that we have and then by the things that we do. Because what we believe is, if I get this Ferrari, or if I get this Instagram following, if I am saving animals in a sanctuary, or if I am running a big company, then I'm going to feel this thing, right? If I have this thing, I'm going to feel joy. If I have this thing, people are going to love me. I'm going to feel love, etc. So what we end up doing is we seek out externalities for the
mm,
feeling that we get, that we're truly looking for, right? And so the consciousness process is to recognize, to flip the script and recognize that instead of looking out there to feel something in here, ask the question, why not now? Why can't you feel peace now? Why can't you feel love now? Why can't you feel grateful now? What does it take to feel that now? And you hit the nail on the head, Joel. The answer is presence. You know, what's so fascinating is we're in what's called the third wave of psychology. The first wave was um, ring a bell, a dog salivates. Oh, humans are the same, right? And to an extent, that's true, right? I have a chicken roasting in the oven right now, and when that bell rings, I'm gonna salivate. you know. The second wave was cognitive behavioral therapy. Your thoughts create your feelings. Here are a bunch of affirmations. Now, the third wave of psychology is really around mindfulness and an integrated approach. Feel yourself in this present moment, and through that present moment, you're going to be able to feel better, right? And what's happening is modern psychotherapy is beginning to intersect with the thousands of years of spirituality that have been out there, you know, with Buddhist psychology, with Hinduism, with Christianity, and that intersection is leading modern science to reevaluate what is actually happening in the mind, body, spirit, right? And when we integrate that with psychedelic assisted therapy or with ceremony, which is often related to 10 hours of therapy in 10 hours, the results are extraordinary, are dramatic. And I say all this to impart that psychotherapy and spirituality is now being bridged with the understanding that presence, mindfulness and presence is the key to persistent happiness, joyfulness, and love. All the things that you want to feel before you pass, that happens through being here now.
I love that, dude. Talk to me about, what do you do to stay present on a regular basis? Are there any practices other than macrodosing psilocybin or anything like that? Like we can't do ceremonia every day of our lives. So what are some rituals or practices that you like that kind of bring you back into that? Because it's so easy. I know you're a high functioning, high achiever and you work with them and it's just a nonstop life and that's my life. So I'm curious for you, like, yeah, what are some things that you like to do?
So I was just recording a podcast with a dear friend, Vishen Lakiani from Mind Valley, and we were talking about this concept of ultra presence, right? And the key is, how do I feel myself while feeling everything else? And
Mm,
and what I'd love to do in this moment, Joel, if you're open to this, is to
let's
walk
go.
you through a practice, right?
I love it. Yeah,
And for
let's do
your
it.
listeners watching this at home, they can try this on, and very quickly you're going to feel it. Ready? It's
Yeah,
about
I
a
love it, man.
minute,
And I can't
minute
wait what
long.
you're gonna say. I love Vishen, have his book, The Extraordinary Mind, and he had a new one out,
Cool.
the 6 phase meditation. So I love everything he's doing. So yeah, I can't wait to hear what you're gonna walk us through. It's gonna be good.
Cool. Okay. So let's start by closing your eyes if that feels comfortable and safe, or holding a soft gaze. I'll start by taking a deep, and as you take this breath, just notice what it feels like in your body, noticing the feet and the ground beneath you. If you're sitting, noticing the earth beneath your body, and noticing what your heart feels like. And when you take another breath, noticing the cold air entering your nostrils, the warm air leaving as you exhale. The breath, I invite you to open your eyes and just look around your space and see if you can notice something that you haven't noticed before. It could be a speck, it could be a color. Just notice around you. Joel, what we're going to do is we're going to look at each other. And as we are looking at each other's eyes, just notice what it's like to be in connection right now. Notice the impact that I have on you, the impact you're having on me. And now with the breath, see if you can tune into your heart while holding the relational context, looking in each other's eyes, feeling your heart. And now see if you can layer on the outside periphery. See if you can look beyond the camera or the eyes to the distance, holding the outside context, holding the relationship, and feeling your heart at the same time, feeling your body. Now see if you can layer on even another sense, the temperature on your skin, while feeling inside of you, while holding the relationship. Okay, let's take a deep breath here. What was that like for you, Joel?
You know, it's funny, man, because even when I first closed my eyes and just took that first deep breath, I just felt in my body. And I feel like a lot of times I'm not. I'm just like bing, bing, bing. I got so many things I'm doing. And, you know, I got to be on when I'm interviewing you or anybody and thinking about my day. And just even closing my eyes, I was like, man, this feels so nice. This feels so good. And just feeling like the air go through my body, the oxygen, the carbon dioxide, just everything. Like, just that moment of awareness, I was like, oh my God, like it reminded me how like I'm so detached from my body
Hmm.
and that just doing that because you guided me through it and I'm intentional was super powerful. And then when I open up my eyes, I want to say there's a photo of my kids in my office.
Hmm.
It's this old photo. They when I went on a trip, they printed out photos. They took photos of themselves and they printed out. So when I got back, it's not like a famous photo. It's just a printed piece of paper, and they stuck it on my wall. And I never took it down. I don't notice it though when I come in my office. It's just
Hmm.
there. It's like it's just not something I even like think about. When you asked me to open up my eyes and look to the periphery, I saw it and I'm like, oh my God, that's such a cool photo of my boys. And I remember when and why they did that. So that would be one thing. And then just also the last thing I'll say is the last piece, when you asked me to look into your eyes and actually connect, I just felt an overwhelming sense of just love and oneness. And I mean, that sounds silly, but if people are like, haven't thought about that but that idea of like, oh my God, I was like, I feel connected to this human being.
Hmm.
And that felt really good. So that was everything that I went through.
Yeah, I'm imagining that so much of that was like slowing down and just paying attention, right?
Huge.
And and what was it like to hold all three contexts at the same time, inside, outside, and relationally?
That felt a little bit more difficult for
Yeah.
me personally. Yeah, that felt a little bit more difficult focusing on just the one thing, like your eyes and being connected there. But then when you're asking me heart, your eyes, the outer periphery, I felt like that was a little bit more challenging, but it also brought in like the entire senses, if that makes sense. Like it forced me to like really like take in everything, not just one thing. So I thought it was interesting.
Totally. In that moment, you are called to an extraordinary level of presence. because the only way to hold so much information is to be right here, right? If you're in your to-do list in your mind, there's no way that you can hold all three contexts, right? And the reason why it's challenging is because it's a muscle that has atrophied, and we get to practice working out that muscle of being really present. And so even just tuning into your body, you already felt more present.
Yeah.
Tuning into the space, you already felt more present. Tuning into me, you already felt more present. What if we were constantly in a state where we're tuning into all three at the same time? And that's what I believe is what enlightenment feels like. And I would say that in that experience, you and I, we hit a temporary state of enlightenment, which is a deep meditative state. Now that took 1 minute, 2 minutes. It's a practice that you can try on all the time. When we do our retreats, we have a number of different workshops. We'd start our first day at 8 a.m. and do workshops until 3 p.m. And then we have a break, and then we do ceremony. And all of those workshops are similar to this, very, very few words and much more embodied practice to train for presence. Now, here's the thing, though, Joel. What's really interesting is we had a participant come, one of our youngest ones, 23 years old, and a month ago. And, in the first kind of like exercise of closing your eyes, I always say, close your eyes if you feel safe and comfortable. And that's because some people hold so much trauma in their system, they're actually not able to close their eyes or not able to look in somebody's eyes, right? And what's happening psychologically is that are so many protective parts that are inhibiting her from being able to be present with her feelings, right? Now, with someone like that, we go very slowly, right? We've had a combat veteran who was in 3 tours, right? I mean, that's a lot of action that he saw. We've also had a participant who's a professor emeritus of Harvard of psychiatry and ran the entire U.S. Army program of psychiatry, right? Come. And in all those cases, there's something that we've locked inside of us that is preventing us from keeping eye contact, from closing our eyes, from tuning into our bodies, right? So what's really important in those instances is to practice skills, the skills coming from modern psychotherapy, from neuroscience, from mindfulness, thousands of years of tradition, and clinical studies. And in the practice of skills of being present, especially with triggered states, we're building our capacity. We're building our capacity to hold more challenging experiences. For example, one of our last workshops is a cold plunge, right? And we're pouring ice from a bag into this water. People are watching that happen. And they're just like, I ask them how they feel, and they feel like, I feel like I'm about to die, right? Have you done a cold plunge, Joel?
I have,
You
and I
do.
actually bought one in the last year because I wanted to toughen up. I'm like, I hate the cold, and I'm like, well, there's only one way to do it, and that's to do it consistently. So I got one to get over that.
Totally, right? And what's really valuable of a cold plunge as preparation for a psychedelic experience is because we're practicing being with something that is very uncomfortable because of our expectations, right? And we're practicing being present when we are trying to fight, flight, or freeze. Because many people, I remember there's a participant Alex, who we have these cold plunges, these big old horse troughs, right? And the 2 people go in at a time while eye gazing and doing a practice that we call here. Like, are you here? Come here. Stay here, and like holding each other in presence. And he's gripping the sides of the horse trough and sitting on it and shaking and really just like his body with all its might is trying not to dip its toes in the water, right? But when he finally went in, he found so much pleasure in it once he was able to be present, to the point where the next day he went in again. The next day he went in again. And he shared with me the reason why he had so much fear in his system. He wasn't even aware of it. He relived an experience of being trapped under the ice in a Colorado river as a kid, So I was like, wow. Imagine the fight, flight, or freeze in Alex's system and being able to meet that with presence. And then what happens as you practice that skill, in that case, it's a group exercise called Here, and the capacity that's built. And then when you go into a psychedelic experience, by that time, A, you've proven to yourself that you can handle really hard things. I mean, that is extraordinarily valuable by itself. B, you've done this with a group that you began as strangers and now you've supported each other. Now you're like family together. You've done hard things together, right? And then three, you know how you've done it. You practice skills so that when you go into the psychedelic or when you go into life and life throws lemons at you, you are a lemon pie mask making master.
Yeah, dude, I love that. And you know, it's so funny because the same thing happened to me just from doing regular cold plunging was, and I remember I even had an instructor once who was like, all right, now push your shoulders down. You know, you get stressed and your shoulders like come up, they flex up, and just being able to drop the shoulders, it takes a lot of relaxation and letting go. And the more I find myself letting go, letting go, letting go, the easier the cold plunge becomes. And I've also found what you just said is that there's interesting. I've found like kind of a hack, which I don't like to use the word, but to presence, because there's nothing if, I mean, you don't have to be present. You can be like, but it's going to be a long time. That 3 minutes in the cold plunge is going to be a long time. But the sooner you can just kind of access that gateway of presence, it's like, like this is happening for me, not to me. And it's a beautiful experience. So I love that
I love
you do
that.
that. It's so cool.
Yeah, to train for this, you really need to have a felt sense of both sides of the spectrum. You need to be able to feel what it's like to be dissociated, to be in the freeze, and you need to be able to feel what it's like to be present, right? And what a lot of practices are missing. So let's say mindfulness, for example, or meditation. Yeah, I'm feeling being present, right? But I don't know what it's like to actually have a felt sense of being dissociated. And so we practice both sides of the coin and then bring it together where you're in a state of dissociation and you bring yourself back to presence. The cold plunge being one example. But if you want to try it on, I have another fun exercise where you can feel dissociated.
I mean, are you talking about like right now? We can do it again.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure, man. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. And this is something that you can practice and actually build your capacity to hold attention when your body is trying to fight, flight, or freeze, or in this case, to freeze. Okay. So Joel, what we're going to do is we're going to ask each other questions, and you can only respond with a question. And we're going to dial up the spiciness.
Sounds good.
Okay. How do you feel right now?
Good. Sorry.
Okay.
All right, start over.
We'll try again. Okay.
Start over. Start over.
Yeah. How do you feel in your body?
How do you feel in your body? Is that how I would do it, or just respond
Yeah.
back like that? Okay.
What's it like to pause?
What's it like to be uneasy?
How do you feel being so uncertain?
How do you feel being so certain?
What's it like trying to find the right answer?
These are good, dude.
Do you see how like, did you feel that like almost that moment of short circuiting? Like,
I felt like you had me on the ropes.
yeah.
I felt like you were so connected with me and you were able to, like, you had me on the ropes. I felt like I was hitting shots, and I'm like, man, how can I throw back a good question back to you when you've already like hit me with a good body blow? I'm like, man, I don't know how can I deliver something back to you that's just as spicy? This is, yeah, that was good.
Totally. Right. And for those at home listening that can practice with their partner, see, here's what happens. Earlier I said attention is power. And when when I ask you a question, what happens to your attention? Your attention goes inwards into yourself to look for the answer, into your thoughts, into your body, right?
Wow. Yeah.
I asked you, how do you feel your body? What do you feel in your body? Immediately, the training that we have in society and in relationship is to go inwards. But with the instruction here about responding with a question, our attention needs to be outwards on the other person, right? Because you need to be able to look at me and ask me something based on what you see in me. And so what we're training for in that instance is, how do we command our own attention? And if you look at, let's say, relationship conflicts or even power dynamics, when I did this with a partner one time, they related to me a story of interacting with their boss, right? and their boss would just constantly ask them questions, and in that, for that person, they just kept kind of short circuiting and kind of getting frazzled, right? Like I bet a bunch of people can resonate with that. And that's because there's a power dynamic happening where that person out there is commanding the attention in here. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah.
And so in that, like, kind of like how do I answer that? That's the feeling of freeze in the fight, flight, or freeze. That's a moment where we dissociate from our experience, right? And how do we train for being present with ourselves when we're in a state like that? Right? See, what's interesting is these are skills that can be practiced, and you can train yourself to always bring yourself back to here now.
Yeah, that one was so cool. I mean, I was thinking, I'm like, I should try that with my wife tonight. Like, that'd be a fun one just to, like, from a relationship standpoint, I feel like you could learn a lot about it,
Totally.
about each other and just kind of have some fun and make light of the evening, right?
Just a little quick forewarning. I did it one time with my wife. It was actually the first time, and she's like, "What's it like to be an asshole?"
I can already see, yeah, I can already see ours going that way and ending in like a minute. I'm like, all right, the game is over now. I can
Yeah, exactly.
I was just thinking though, as you were talking too, in these retreats, I do a lot of relationship coaching now, but I was thinking, even, do you find, you do a lot of these partner exercises. Do partners, like, for example, would my wife and I show up and would we do some of these together? Do people do that? I guess is what I'm asking, because it seems like could be a transformational experience for them in their relationship.
Oh, absolutely. And if people are in a stable relationship, I actually encourage them to come with their partner. We had a participant named Steph that came. Um, Steph and I were already good friends, and she came, and something that the feminine often explores in a transformational experience is power, right? Like, how do I show up with my own power, especially in a patriarchal society, right? And something that Steph discovered is how to use her voice and how to be in her power. After that experience, she transitioned from being a nurse, and her husband is director of an ER, and in fact, our medical director, um, and transitioned to being a coach because it's something that she wanted to do her whole life, but didn't summon the power to do it, right? She had this incredibly profound transformation. She said that she cried the first time in more than 20 years, right? And I think the last time that she cried was when a parent had passed. But the 3 months between when she went home and when her husband of 21 years um, came to our retreat, they had some of the greatest friction and conflicts that they've ever had, and their relationship almost fell apart. And then I remember Michael coming, her husband, and after the first ceremony, he had tears in his eyes, and he said, "I get it. I finally get it, and it's been me all along, and I want to call my wife this moment and say I'm sorry," you know. And then when he finished the experience, and she came on Sunday to greet him, and they had the biggest hug. I took the most beautiful photo, and he just said, "I understand now. We're going to make a change in our life." Right?
Mm.
And their relationship, they've been together 20 plus years, has blossomed in a way that neither of them could predict. And I just am so filled with love reminiscing about it.
Yeah, that is so cool. Hey, Austin, talk about, we've gotten a lot of good stuff today, but talk about, if people are interested and they're just hearing everything you have to say about Ceremonia and just some of the practices and stuff. Can you just kind of explain, what makes Ceremonia different and what you guys are doing? Then maybe some of, like, we're seeing, for a good, which I think is positive, we're seeing a lot of psychedelics, and we hear a lot of people going to the Amazon and doing with shamans and doing retreats. But what do you think separates Ceremonia from maybe some of these other trips that you're hearing from other people? And I know you have different levels, I believe, too, that people can explore. It's not just the 3-day retreat. I think you do a 1-day, a 3-day, and then there's an ayahuasca. So kind of explain people for that if they don't know.
Yeah, happy to. So we're a legal and nonprofit psychedelic sanctuary in Denver, Colorado, and we're legal both under state and federal law. State law under Colorado's Natural Medicine Health Act, for which I was on a subcommittee for and in advisory capacity to the government. And then federally under the Religious Rights and Freedom Act, because we are incorporated as a church and we hold a regular Sunday service, and we have built this really beautiful community of our alumni. What we believe is that for you to create lasting transformation, you need to have self-mastery. And the way to get self-mastery is by learning skills, practicing that, and building your capacity, as I had shared earlier. The difference with other organizations is there's really two models. There's the clinical model and there's the shamanic model. The clinical model, often, let's say with ketamine clinics, which were legalized in 2019 federally, is you go into a white doctor's office, you get an injection or take a lozenge, hour and a half later, you're in an Uber ride home. And there's no real preparation, integration, there's no support, and it's a very sterile environment, right? In that sort of model, there's a high standard of medical care, but unfortunately, it doesn't promote spiritual experiences, right? And there's a high degree of mystical and spiritual experiences in psychedelic work. I would say there's 100% of that, even for hardcore atheists that come through Ceremonia. And it doesn't really promote durable mental wellness, because what happens is when you go back to life and life hits you in the face, you're like, oh, how do I feel better? I need to go back to the clinic and get another shot. And in that way, it's no real different than the Western medical model, right? The shamanic model is we come into a center, we shake hands with a group of strangers, and then 2 hours later, we're tripping together. Now, the psychedelic experience is primarily determined by the feeling of safety. And there's two kinds of safety. There's outer safety and inner safety. Outer safety is like, how safe do I feel in this space with this group of people, with the facilitators? Am I warm? Is my belly full, etc. Right? And inner safety is, how safe do I feel meeting myself when I'm triggered, when I meet a trauma, how safe do I feel in my experience of me? Now, we believe that the most important recipe for outer safety is connection. How is creating a field of vulnerability and authenticity. And in our circle, people usually relate within 2 to 4 hours, they feel closer with this group that were previously strangers, closer with them than they do with their family, than with their closest friends. We've had people share with us in the group secrets that they've held on to for 30 years. And we believe that the best form of inner sense of safety is this self-empowerment, is self-mastery. Because the best form of safety that you can possibly have is whatever comes into me, whatever challenge I experience, I can handle it. I've got it, right? So what happens is when people go and finally actually consume the sacrament of psilocybin or ayahuasca in our center, number one, they are feeling so connected, so self-empowered, they feel like they've been in a meditation retreat with their best friends prior to even doing psychedelic work. And then number two, because we are surrounded by world-class facilitators, some of the top psychologists in the world, some of the top psychedelic therapists in the world, they have a feeling of safety with us as a facilitation team. Not to mention that it's legal and that we're doing this not for money, So there's a lot of aspects that lead us to we're one of the leading institutions in the United States and one of the first to receive, we anticipate being one of the first to be licensed under Colorado state law, as well as to train and license other practitioners. This is a model that doesn't exist out there, whether that's in the jungle or in a clinic. It's an integrated model of psychology, of spirituality, of neuroscience that is combining the scientific and the shamanic models together.
Dude, I love that. And I also love that I now know I don't have to go to the Amazon and, look for someone. I can stay in the United States and go right to Colorado,
Yeah.
quick flight over, and that's all I got to do. That
and
is
then you
amazing.
can ski and snowboard afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. So cool, man, what you're doing. And you are a world changer, man, disrupting the world in a good way. And I love that. Thank you so much. Tell everybody just where they can find you, connect with you if they want to learn more about Ceremonia, or even on social. Is there a good way where do you live typically? Is it Instagram, or where's a good place to connect with you there?
We're on Instagram and YouTube at ceremoniacircle.org or Ceremonia Circle on Instagram. If you just Google Colorado Psilocybin, we were number one on the results. We're pretty easy to find, and we're just 40 minutes from the airport.
Amazing. Austin Mao from Ceremonia. Appreciate you, brother, so much. Thank you. Thanks for being on the show. And just again, thanks for what you're doing. You're a world changer. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me, Joel.